When an internationally notorious dog breeder took his prize dog into the woods and abandoned her there, the dog was left confused. So when she's later confronted with a new, intimidating master, like the local timber wolves, she faces one of the greatest threats to her existence ever. It's what happens afterward that shocks everyone. Deep in the lush woods lived a man who was notorious for the high-quality dogs that he bred every year. The trick was that his female breeder was half wolf, half dog. This allowed for some beautiful, unique puppies that had a high demand list. So much so that the poor female, Princess, was left completely depleted after just 6 years due to overuse and a lack of variety in the gene pool of breeding. The dog breeder, Boromir, quickly faced a very difficult issue. He realized Princess was no longer up to the task, and he also knew that simply retiring her and keeping her as a pet would just mean an extra mouth to feed. So he set out to do the truly unthinkable. He needed to get rid of her, and fast. Now, of course, Princess was completely oblivious to her master's plans, and in turn got quite excited when he took out her harness. She loved a good walk amongst the surrounding nature. Boromir couldn't bring himself to hurt his dog explicitly in any way, so he was only left with one option. He needed to abandon her far away from his compound. Because Princess had just given birth to a litter of puppies, Boromir knew he needed to coax her gently away. The best way to do that? Take her out for her regularly timed walk. Only on this particular day, his plans were completely different. After walking for about 30 minutes, they started to surpass their normal distance. Concerned, Princess started looking at her master for affirmation, which she got. They continued for another 30 minutes before all of a sudden, Boromir came to a sudden stop. He placed the leash firmly around the trunk of a tree and then asked for Princess to sit. She did so obediently, eager to please her master, not realizing what was to follow. Boromir gave her a good old pat on the head and told her to stay. Turning his back on her, he simply walked away. The princess was not confused at first. She simply thought her master would be coming back any time soon. Only when the sun began to fall in the sky, Princess started to feel distressed. Where could her master possibly be? What was she to do? The hunger pangs in her stomach grew, in addition to the ache she felt for her poor puppies back at the compound, which would undoubtedly be very distressed by the absence of their mother. Trying to maintain some sense of hope and loyalty, Princess simply laid down and tried to get some sleep for the night, hoping that the next day would hold a better future. She awoke the next morning with a drip of water falling onto her head. It was raining, and by the looks of her surroundings, it had been for some time. Luckily, her thick coat helped to prevent her from getting too wet. It was at that moment that the pangs of hunger echoed through her body once more with such intensity that she forgot the loyalty she felt for her master and started gnawing through the leash that held her to the tree. She needed to find food urgently. Thanks to her sharp canine, she was able to rip through the leash within the hour and was free to roam. Unfamiliar with her surroundings, she put her nose to the ground and began the hunt. She needed to find the scent of something manageable to hunt because she was very used to getting her food served in a bowl. Luckily for Princess, a little squirrel happened to cross her path. This resulted in enough sustenance to continue her hunt. Just 20 minutes later, she'd hunted down a hare and a badger. This ended up being quite the meal she needed. Knowing she needed some fresh water, she tried to track the local river. Only when she placed her nose to the ground again this time, she caught a whiff of something she wasn't quite expecting. In fact, it was something she feared. The scent of a wolf. Now, while she may be half wolf herself, she had been raised domestically, and as such was not prepared to come into contact with a wild wolf, never mind a pack of them. She was about to turn in the opposite direction when she heard something quite familiar. The little whimpers of a pup, a sound she was all too used to. Call it her mom instinct or something similar, but she felt she needed to investigate further. Good thing she did. It took Princess just over 10 minutes to find the strong source of the smell, and also the whimpers. Just under a tree was a clear dugout den. Advancing slowly, she kept her wits about her as she peered up and looked down into the den. She saw that there was a she-wolf that had sadly passed away. It seemed that she had sustained wounds to her side. Behind her peeped over 6 little noses. This was it. The pups had been hiding behind their mother's body, crying for help, not knowing what to do. Princess's instinct had been right. She took hardly a minute to contemplate what she was to do. Her mammary glands were swollen with milk from the litter she'd been separated from, and these pups needed a foster mother. It was fate at its finest. She dragged the body of the mother out of the den and away from them. She then slowly made herself comfortable in the den, licking the pups to make them more comfortable with her. They must have been starving because it took less than 5 minutes for them to latch and start feeding. This provided Princess with relief, but she also felt better. Helping out her new little family was exactly what she needed after all she'd been through. The pups accepted Princess like their very own mother and quickly grew in size. Princess learned to hunt better with time as she needed to provide enough sustenance for her foster pups. But soon enough, they were big enough to join her on the hunt for food. They, too, had to learn how to hunt to provide for themselves one day whilst they were their own pack now. In a few seasons, they would need to start expanding their pack if they were to compete with the neighborly groups of wolves. Princess did her best to equip the now adolescent pups with what they needed to be strong members of nature. They rough played together, learning how to pin each other down while also stalking each other successfully without the other knowing it. This very training was about to come in handy sooner than they might have initially realized. It was a mysterious day, one that left Princess sniffing the air more than often. There was a low-lying fog that kept visibility to a minimum. She had set off on her own for a hunt, leaving the youngsters behind. She enjoyed doing this. It was only 20 minutes into her hunt that she heard some scuffling around her. Throwing her nose into the air, she was met with the familiar scent of wolves. This was a problem. Her heart started beating rapidly. She knew she stood no chance against a pack of wolves. If what she anticipated was correct, she was about to enter very dangerous territory. A dark figure emerged from the fog, walking towards her. It was a big, black, shaggy male wolf that was growling menacingly at her. Racing to defend herself, more wolves emerged from the depths of the fog, shocking her. Princess knew she didn't stand a chance. She lowered herself in submission in an attempt to avoid the attack, but the teeth-bearing wolves did not take this action the correct way. It made them pounce on her. She was ready to fight with everything she had in her, but that's when the 6 young wolves dashed out of the brush line in the corner of Princess's eye. They fought off the wolves that were coming at Princess, and they scared the pack off. That would be the last they would see of the evil pack. Princess was relieved. They saved her. Right in front of her were her no longer small pups, simply happy to see their mother okay. She was overjoyed to see them as well. Through her kindness and taking them on when they most needed her, they had returned the favor by saving her life just months later. What an incredible story. Talk about a kind heart that stayed kind when even though the one she trusted betrayed her. And in return, her kindness was returned in the same way.